Yes, so this 502 study was a study that was done to show efficacy of lumateperone as an add-on therapy, as an adjunctive therapy to antidepressants. And we have designed two studies. This is the second study. So this is to replicate the data and to add the body of evidence. So here we looked at patients who had inadequate response to uh, antidepressants, that is, patients who had less than 50% response in their ongoing uh, antidepressant treatment. And then we added lumateperone on top of that to see if there is additional efficacy. And in this particular study, both the primary endpoint and secondary endpoints were statistically significant and robust, which showed that the patients who had inadequate response were beneficial on adding lumateperone on top of antidepressants. So the primary endpoint was MADRS total score. The key secondary endpoint was CGIS score. We also included additional endpoint for QIDS SR16, which is a patient-rated scale. So we have demonstrated in all these three scales, it was significant from a rating perspective, from a clinician perspective, as well as from a patient perspective. We also saw that we also included additional measures like MADRS response and remission rates. MADRS response is defined as patients who has improved more than 50% from baseline, and remission is if their scores go less than 10. So both of these endpoints also were significant. In addition, we also have demonstrated that uh, we have used other scales. For example, sexual dysfunction scale was used in this particular study, which was also shown to reduce sexual dysfunction because it's one of the common adverse events with antidepressants. So these are the common things we have seen. And also we have shown that the adverse event profile for lumateperone has remained the same. There was no new adverse events, especially with adverse events that are very liable for antipsychotics, mainly weight gain, cardiometabolic parameters like glucose, triglycerides, um, cholesterol, prolactin, also was another measure we have measured, and EPS symptoms. In all these parameters, we have shown that they were similar to placebo, and this was consistent across all our trials, including in other indications. And for EPS symptoms, we were very low, uh, uh, and also was consistent with what we have seen with our other trials. And this also adds because the unmet need is patients with inadequate response. There are only few treatments available. So adding this to that armamentarium for the prescriber's toolbox will help in as another option because of the robust efficacy and also the side effect burden that is very less. Yes. So in this study, as well as in the other study I was talking to you about, the 501, we have seen efficacy as early as 1 to 2 weeks. In this particular study, it took about 2 weeks to show significant. That is very relevant because usually patients, if you look at the other antidepressant trials uh, that have seen efficacy, it takes about 4 to 6, 8 weeks, depending on when you see the efficacy, at least the onset. And here, seeing efficacy as early as 1 to 2 weeks helps with the patients that they don't have to, if they know, they will know earlier on that whether this is going to work for them or not. So in that sense, that not wanting to wait for a long time in treatment decisions to either change or change the medication. In this particular trial, we have shown that this worked within 2 weeks. Yes, I would say let's take about particular patient populations. Patients in this particular trial who had not responded to one or two drugs, who had partial response, would be candidates, and they are about, if you look at the total entire population of major depressive disorder, about about 2/3 don't respond to treatments adequately. So all those patients would be a good candidate for considering an option for CAPLYTA. Second one would be any patient who has side effect burden that relates to weight gain, um, cardiometabolic changes, EPS symptoms, or prolactin issues would be an option. And also in terms of the side effect profile itself, we have shown not only in this study, we have also had one other study, a long-term study, which whatever we have seen in this 6 weeks has consistently stayed throughout the 6 months. So that provides additional benefit. So in this particular study, the discontinuations were 12.4 versus 0.8 in this between drug and placebo. But looking at that, there was patients in terms of the discontinuations. Most of the patients, again, if you look at the overall, over 90, that is close to 89% of the patients continued the trial overall in this study. And while it sounds that there is a high discontinuation, those patients, if you look at any one reason why they have discontinued, only dizziness was the one that was discontinued more than 2%. Everything else was a single or two event driven issue. So, plus also, if you look at the adverse event profile itself, 97% of the patients were either, the adverse events were either mild or moderate. And knowing that this also, if you look at the common adverse events that are somnolence, dizziness, nausea, fatigue, and diarrhea, these common adverse events, most of the times they have dissipated within 2 to 3 weeks. So the onset was in the first 1 to 2 weeks, and then within 2 to 3 weeks, they have disappeared. So knowing that knowledge and communicating that to the prescribers would help them in making treatment decisions, that educating the patient upfront what to expect from the drug in terms of efficacy and side effects. So if they are aware that this will not be present for a longer period of time, it's going to go away in 2 to 3 weeks, that helps with continuing the drug. So I would say if you look at the profile of the compound, we have seen robust efficacy. We have seen a drug placebo difference of minus 4.5. And if you look at the other approved antipsychotics for treatment of MDD, if you look at their label profiles, this is significantly higher than what we have seen, that minus 4.5. That translates to an effect size of 0.56. That is also very robust. So in terms of the efficacy, I think lumateperone, that is CAPLYTA, has separated itself as a very strong, efficacious drug from an efficacy point of view, and also from the side effect profile, where we have shown there is minimal weight gain, which is very similar to placebo. In terms of the cardiometabolic events like cholesterol, triglycerides, and glucose, they were also similar to placebo. And even in the long term, and in the 6 month study, it was very similar, and that persisted throughout 6 months, that we were able to show that there was no liabilities for um, the cardiometabolic events. And other one, the prolactin is another issue. So taking all that into one consideration, looking at why people discontinue, side effects is one of the reasons. And if people are able to stay on the medication for a long time with this robust efficacy, also that it also differentiates in one aspect in terms of the onset of action, right? We have seen onset of action as early as 1 to 2 weeks. That also helps in prescribers. I would say, taking into consideration, the key decisions would be knowing the profile of the compound uh, based on its mechanism of action, the robust efficacy seen as early as 1 to 2 weeks, and also weighing that with the side effect profile of the compound and maintaining that over a longer period of time. I think all of this knowledge, and also in this patient population, that in these patients who did not respond to 1 to 2 drugs, this has shown demonstrated robust efficacy, and the side effects that were present or what were reported were over 97% were mild to moderate, and that these side effects lasted only for 2 to 3 weeks. So that helps in knowing that, helps in prescribing habits, and also helpful for the patients, mainly because if a compound that has less weight gain, no cardiometabolic issues, patients will be the ultimate beneficiaries for this product.